Hey guys, thanks for hanging out with me. Matt C here. I'm walking around in my front yard and there's crickets. So the only other time I can pull these things off when I'm not driving around in my car is walking around in my yard. And I can't shake this thought that Cowboy Bebop might be good. So hear me out. I know we're all prepped and primed for things going bad, right? But I think we forget the sensation we get when we see something that's so bad it's good. Now, this is what I mean. I've been comparing this movie to uh, the 1994 film The Mask. You probably seen it with Jim Carrey, or maybe I always want to call it Stacy, Dick Tracy, from like I think that was '92, something like this. Just like grotesque camera angles, lots of like on-set, uh, garish, colorful lighting, uh, like ugly appeals to the very topical catchphrases. This is the stuff of charm. It really can work. I don't know if you. I'll just keep going through examples of things that I know that that you like, and if you haven't tried them, you'll discover that you like them too. How about have you ever seen gore movies? there's there's one called Phallus in Paradise. I haven't seen, but there's one called Skullhead Face. I think that's from '91 or '92. That's a pretty good one. I've seen enough of it to get a sense that I appreciate that it exists. You kind of have to don't don't try to watch it on your lunch break. Make sure you already got your food down before you watch that. But just it all comes back to pastiche. Okay, so it's taking things that don't go together and confidently, stupidly mashing them together until the earnestness of your attempt, of your self confidence, that not self confidence that you're awesome and the fan base is stupid, but your self confidence that you're making something awesome that the fans will love and that new audiences will appreciate. That does tend to work, and it's been a minute since people have gotten that. uh, Frankly, I think if people think back on what folks were expecting with the Mandalorian TV show, like the Baby Yoda situation, as that kind of as we got used to that after I think it was episode 2, really, is when he showed up. There were lots of questions about how stupidly, like, are we really going to mash up uh, a Western with daddy daycare, right? And it I think most people would agree that it worked. Um, Cowboy Bebop itself, the anime, is, I mean, what's the name? It's cowboy and it's bebop. So we're taking jazz, noir, uh, plus bounty hunter, kind of shooting from the hip cowboy appeal, and we're throwing that into space, right? With a little bit, in hindsight, it's got little bit of that like antique 90s emergent sort of cyberpunk appeal, right? And cyberpunk is kind of a funny thing in itself too, and this ties into the TV show, is that we've got a remake that's 20 years later. That's a full generation down the road, with a generation uh, apart from the interests and expectations of those who grew up on the TV show. So what can you get with this show a generation down the road? You can get a bit more, uh, there's a broader vocabulary of cyberpunk sort of aesthetic and kind of visual conversations you can have. You can actually, at this point, you can look back into the 90s, which I think they're pretty bullheadedly doing, which gives me hope. You can actually start shamelessly taking from the terrible cinematography and directing and even casting decisions that you see in a lot of B movies from the 90s, like the ones I mentioned. And it kind of starts to feel fresh again. So like Noir was completely dead with a couple exceptions. I mean, anime had never really gone into it by the late 90s, as far as I'm aware. And there were a couple, other than like LA Confidential or something like this, there wasn't that much that had ever kind of revisited it in the 90s. There was enough to be aware of it, but there wasn't enough to have exhausted the field. So I think 20 years later, you can't go back to the same well. I don't think noir can be approached the same way, though it's still probably just as dead as it was 20 years ago. So you can potentially represent it as freshly as folks did 20 years ago. But you're going to have to take a new spin. And so I think they might have something here just by being the first movie you've seen in a while, or a TV show that you've seen in a while, that's very expensively produced and is ugly and has fun being ugly. And a lot of this movie is ugly. Now, I keep saying movie, this TV show. Now, the one thing that I'm kind of disappointed in, frankly, is you can be ugly visually, but you kind of still need some poetry and dialogue. And so far, all the dialogue has been, and this might not be what's in the show itself. We know from experience that trailers, usually get like a little more on the nose take for dialogue, and then it gets a little. You might get something more subtle in the actual episodes, but dialogue's pretty terrible. And the show was poetic, and there's a lot of ways to do, animes are generally more poetic. Japanese culture is a little more, they appreciate not being so blunt, I think, typically in dialogue. And so I'm a little surprised that they didn't even attempt to be, to impress us on the dialogue side. But even that could be interesting, to just be so brutal and simplistic and childish with the dialogue that it actually could win you over. Now, all of this could be false. I could be eating my hat a few weeks from now when the show comes out, if if it becomes bland, right? If it turns out to be safely produced. That could very well happen. Most shows are safely produced, or they take risks only in one direction, only in safe directions, which impress no one, particularly when it comes to remakes, and generally are, laughed at by audiences and forgotten a month later. Much more expensive shows have suffered from the same thing. So yeah, we'll see. I'm impressed with I'm impressed with the garishness. I really am. I noticed this in the first trailer. I'm seeing it in the trailer from a day ago. I had a day to think about it. Didn't want to kind of rush into it, but it's pretty ugly. And that's got me paying attention, because it's been a while since I've seen something that isn't overly polished, and that could be a good thing. That could be kind of refreshing. because that could be a signal, I think, to us who haven't seen the show yet. It could be a signal, a genuine signal, that something interesting and original and creative is coming down the pike for us from Netflix. So don't write off FLIXBOP yet. I think we might enjoy it. I don't know if it's another Mandalorian, but there's something worth watching. So I'm gonna be reviewing this show. I typically I kind of dropped off of making YouTube videos, but I think this is gonna be the show that I kind of watch and review. So you can come here for Bebop commentary. It's a show that I enjoy immensely. It's one of the few things I own. I know it very well, and I know the sort of genres that they've been playing with. So we'll see what they're going to do for us. Hopefully, they give us something ugly and exciting and surprising and earnest and original. So talk to you guys later. Thanks for hanging out with me. Bye.